Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Laravel 9 Basic Beginners course. This is episode 7. In our previous episode, we talked about, setting up the whole controller for the API, setting up a migration, creating the to-do model. And in this episode, we're going to continue that flow and we're going to, create other endpoints and, do other things on our API and our application will build it. Okay. So, starting off from where we stopped, if you remember, we had a Postman collection and we created a simple, we have a simple slash to do route and we're sending, when we send a request, we get a setup complete and all of that. So we're not going to be using our browser for this. I mean, I think we're going to be working with the Postman collection going forward. So I'm just going to, get this here. This was where we stopped. If you didn't see the previous episode, you should check it out. So let's go down to our controller. So this is what we had. Now, as we said, we have a database and it's MySQLite, but I also like us to have, access to this database to see what we're actually doing. That way we get to know that what we're doing works. Um, So I'm just going to have a table plus. I mean, if you don't, you could actually get any of the softwares out there. And I'm just going to create a new connection, SQLite. I'm going to call this Zuri. Okay, I'm just going to select the SQLite file. Now you could, and then I'm going to connect to this. You could I think there are other tools out there you could check. I'm not so sure which exactly, but there's some basic free tools out there you could use to access MySQLite data and all of that. Okay, so now we have this. I'm just going to leave this as this. I'm just going to leave it here, and we're going to move forward. Now, for our to-do application, we want to be able to, as you remember, this is a crowd. We want to be able to create data, want to be able to read data, want to be able to update data, want to also be able to delete data. Now, what we basically have right now is an index page, which is, accessing um, our data. So usually in standards, index pages, index routes, or index methods are usually used to access data that exists in our application, which is, for example, if we have to do, we want to see all the list of to-dos that we have. Usually this would be the appropriate place to do this. There's no rules for this, but it's just common practice. Okay, remember that. So I'm going to create, few more methods, okay? And I'm going to say call this store, okay? And I'm going to create another one and I'm going to call this update, okay? I'm going to create another one lastly, and I'm going to call this delete. Oh, let's call this destroy actually. All right. Uh, Hold on a second. Okay. So we have one, two, three, four, and and lastly, one more. Okay. I'm going to call this show. All right. So we have this one, two, three, four, five. And basically, these are going to be our routes. This is going to be used for accessing a collection of data from our model, which is all the list of data. We're going to use this for accessing a single data, all right? And we're going to use this for storing, which is creating. We're going to use this for updating, and then we're going to use this for deleting. I'm pretty sure you guessed that and all that. So in order for us to, I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. In order for us to do that, for the very first one is we have the index, we have the show, we have the store, and we're going to have to do the store, which is creating data. If we remember, we have tag status and completed, okay? And ideally, when we want to create data, we want to create a total. So we actually want to fill in tags and say, hey, this is what we want to do, okay? And all of that. So for now, we're not actually going to be completing it. We're just going to say this is what we want to do, all right? And all that. In our model, I'm going to do something. There's something called cast in Laravel, and cast allows us to tell Laravel that okay, hey, whatever data that's been passed into here or been gotten from this field, we want it to be a particular data type. Okay, and I want to actually cast the status data type to a boolean. So that way I want to see it in true or false. So in Laravel and in database, when you have a Boolean field, it's usually you get 0 or 1, right? And I mean that's how you I'll probably show it to you. You get to see what I'm talking about shortly. That way it's way easier for you to understand and how this is working. Okay. So let's create our first data and we're going to go over to the store method. Okay. And then we want to take in a request. Remember, just like we did for the post in our form, we want to take in a request, okay, to have access to the request. All right. And for now, we're just going to say uh dump the requests all. All right. And I'm just going to save that. We're going to rename this. Let's rename this to let's say view all to do's. Okay. That did that work? View all to do's. Okay. And we're going to create another. We're going to create a separate endpoint, a collect route, and we're going to call this. Uh, let's call this. Let's give this 127, and this is going to be a post request. Okay. I'm just going to move this here. Something is not right. Okay, yeah. We're going to say create to do. This is meant to be a post request and not a get request. Click save. And we're going to go down here to the body. So in Postman, if you want to create a post request, you're going to go down here to the body. All right. And then you're going to want to select, I mean, depending on the kind of data you want, you could actually select raw and switch this to JSON. But I mean, we're all beginners, right? So we're going to select this guy over here, which is form URL encoded. And we're going to use the simple graphic interface to create data. So if you remember, what we want to take in is we want to create a tags. Okay, and the text it's more like the title or whatever it is. So we're just going to say let's give a text of study a new language. Okay, I'm just going to call it that. And for status is actually defaultly false, but we could actually still pass the status and we could say 0. So 0 is equivalent to false and 1 is equivalent to true. For completed at, we do not want to perhaps pass completed at. We could, that way, if for example we wanted to create something in our history that hey we did this, some of them, but I don't think we want to do this for this course. Okay, so we're just going to say tags and status, all right, and I'm going to save that. Now, if I should send this shouldn't work, and we should get an issue. Why? Because we do not have a post route, if you remember, in our API method. So in order for us to do this, I'm just going to do this and duplicate that, and I'm simply just going to change this to post, and I'm also going to change this to store, if you get that correctly. Okay, and if I were to send this now. Now we got the dump that we did. Uh, I mean, if you get this, please just click on preview. Usually that's how the die dump shows in Postman. So you get the dump, and now we can see that we have tags and we have status of 0. Okay, Um, Now in Laravel, there's something called form requests. Okay, and usually form requests is a way of validating data that comes into your application before it hits your application. All right. And for this tutorial, we're going to create a simple form request. And in order for us to do that, that way we're able to, validate data properly and, get the appropriate data. So if for us to do that, we're going to say PHP artisan make request. Okay. And we're going to call this store to do request. All right. And when we do this, it's going to create a file. If you go down to HTTP requests, you get to see this file here called store to do request. Okay. And as you can see, it creates this simple, it has two methods, authorize and rules. First thing you want to do is change here to true. Is we're trying to say, hey, we want to authorize this to this request. And then we say true. And then right here, what we want to do is we want to pass the validation. Okay. Remember, we're taking in the field called tags. So we're going to call this tags. And then tags, if you remember, is a string, right? And I'm not sure we want to give it a maximum amount of characters that we want to, but yeah, we should probably do that. And want to say the maximum amount of character you could put in should be let's say 150 text. I mean when you put in text, it shouldn't be more than 150. Okay. And also the next line is going to be status, right? And then we're going to say this is a boolean, all right? And we could actually just leave this as this. This is a boolean, right? Basically. So what happens is right now we're not actually setting any of them to required. Another thing we want to do is say, hey, for you to actually create a to-do, you want this field, we want this field to be required. All right. But for this guy here, I do not want it to be required. So I'm just going to say sometimes. And the reason why I'm saying sometimes is that I'm saying if this field exists, validate it. If it doesn't, you could just leave it as it is and all of that. So that means I could actually send a request as this without passing in the status, and actually I could also send a request as this. Okay. But if I were to actually send a request and, I did instead of sometimes I had required and I don't send this request, watch what happens. Oh, okay. Sorry, okay, now I just realized. So when you create this, you want to link your request to store. I guess that's why this is still showing the die dump. So in order for us to do this, we'll change this request to store to do request, like so. And you want to ensure that it's imported at the top, okay? Store to the request, you want to ensure that it has the use app HTTP request store to the request at the top of the field. Okay, so if I were to do this again, hmm, that's strange. That didn't work as it should. We have store to the request. We're making this request to this and hold on a second, something isn't right. Uh, I mean, this was working for a second there, just so then DD request. Oh, uh, return. Let's see. Could this be? Hmm. Hmm. Except Okay. Um, so one thing about APIs is usually there's something called headers and HTTP requests. And this is a way to tell, the server and saying, hey, this is the kind of data we're expecting, or this is the kind of data we are sending in, and all of that. So commonly, for Laravel, when Laravel wants to send back data back to you on an API, it would check if you're expecting to receive a JSON data. But if you're not, it's going to serve you something. I mean, this simple HTTP request, and that is the reason why we were getting, we're getting, the page we were getting instead of getting a JSON response. So if you were to, ever experience that, all you have to do is pass in header that says accept, and put application slash JSON. This is we telling Laravel that hey, we're expecting a JSON response back to whatever thing we're sending down to you. Okay, so usually you probably would do this in, both to do and, post and whatever, whatever route you're going to create, okay, and all that. So as you can see, we get this error as we hoped. I'm just going to delete this as we hoped for, because we are actually requiring the status field, but we're actually not passing it. So it's going to tell us that hey, the status is actually required. Okay, so if we pass this now and we were to send this, we should hit the DD as well, and then we'll get what we talked about and all that. So in order for us to create this, I'm going to simply carry on, and we're going to create a simple to do. We're going to call this to do is equal to. Remember, we had, like I told you, the model is equivalent to a table, let's say a table clock for the database. So a model is equivalent to a table. That way it's easier for you to understand. So we want to insert data into that table. And usually in Laravel, there's a method called create. So you first of all select the model. You want to ensure that you're importing it as use app models slash todo. Okay. And then we have create, a method called create. All right. And then in here, it takes in an array, right? And the array is going to be tags, which is going to be our request tags, okay? Because if you remember our data or our input, what we're sending here is text. So there's going to be a field called tags, or you can do input and say tags. Now, this way it's going to return null, but still this is the same as saying tags. All right. It all depends on what you want. This would also return null if it's not found and all that. And then we're going to say status is going to be request, and we're going to say status. Okay, and all that. So now, after we're done creating this, we want to return this data to the front end and say, hey, this is the data we just created. So in order to do that, we're going to say response JSON, okay? And then for the data, first of all, we're just going to say data, and then we're going to say to do, all right? And pretty much that's it. Now, I know we could easily do this. I mean, first of all, we're just going to do this. Okay, there's an easy way to, I mean, instead of having to fill all of this, and that's where this comes in. This, form request, apart from validating, comes in really handy. So we're just going to click send, and as you can see, now we have a new data that's been created, and it said tags, study a new language, status 0, and updated that and created that. Um, so I actually do not want this to, show this way. We're going to try and fix that shortly. I want to show either true or false. In order to check our data, MySQL data, what's going on? Hmm, that's strange. For some reason, I don't know. I think something is wrong with this. It's refusing to give us the data. Hmm, that's strange. Okay, I'm not going to waste time with this. Oh, okay. Sorry, I think this. So while we were in this state, there's this covering the data here exactly. So we couldn't see it, but it was right here. I'm just gonna close this. So I'm just going to open this. Now this is the first data we just created. I'm just going to make this bigger. As you can see, we have the ID, we have the tags, we have status, and we have completed that, right? And all of that. So you can see that this data has been created. It was created at this time, and it was, the last updated that it was also at this time, given the fact that this was the very first time we have the data. Okay, but completed that is null, right? If you remember, we wanted that to be nullable. Now, in order to move forward, like I said, I didn't want we could actually make this, do this faster. So instead of passing this, we could just easily say request validated. So this is saying that, hey, we want to get the validated request and just, put it in here. Why? Because we know that the names and the keys of this request are actually matching the names of the data as well as the data we want to put into the database. So if we put this study in new language two and we should send the request, we should still get, a successful response, as you can see. And if we check the database and refresh this, yeah, we can see study new language too, okay, and all that. Now, let's move forward. First off, let's try to, fix this. I wanted this to be a Boolean. For some reason, it's not returning how I wanted. Okay, before we do that, let's go down to here, and then we want to pass in, now that we have data, we want to say, hey, show all the data that we have in our to-do, so we're going to say to-dos, and in Laravel, in order to get all the data in the database, you could say get. We could just say, hey, just get us all the data in the database. Okay, so for this, we're going to say data, and then we're going to pass this to it and say to-dos. Okay, and we're going to save. If we go back to request over here and we send this, it should give us a list of data that would actually have. So if you're seeing this, I mean, good work, kudos to you. And you can see that we have a collection of data. We have the very first one, which is studying new language and studying new language too. Okay, this is working. We're making progress. Let's see how we could, okay, fix this. Instead, I don't want this to show zero. I want it to show me in, true or false. Think let's get this, and it's in the see if this isn't working. Could it be bool? Let's find out. I think it's boolean, not bool. Okay, let's check the documentation. All right, and let's see if we can get that done. And we have cast and no, castable. Okay, address. No, that's not what we're looking for. Okay, let's quickly. I think it's Boolean. Okay, so this should show you how you can easily get things, easily done. Let's see. Yeah, Boolean. For some reason, I don't know why this isn't working, but perhaps did we spell Boolean falsely or Let's see. Did I spell this wrongly? I mean, this was what we had. Boolean. Okay, so I don't know why that isn't working, but ideally it should. The data I wanted to see is true or false, but let's just move forward, okay? I would probably figure this out before the next episode and all that. So now that we have this, we have we have a simple, we've been able to get to create the data and store it inside the to-do model, which is the table, and we're also able to return all of those data that we've created. Okay, I think can we do one more? I think yes, I think we might be able to do one more. But actually, I think I prefer to, I don't want to, I want to take out the status field from here. I think I prefer to not have it here. I want this to just be a crate. And for that, I'm just going to also update this field to, I'm just going to take that out. I'm going to save that, and I just want only the tags. So in order to be sure that this still works, remember that in our migration, we made status to actually be a default of false. So what that means is it should automatically make our field false, right? So let's try that. I'm just going to say 3, and I'm okay. Sorry guys. Uh, I'm going to click send. Yep. So now we have this, and it creates the data for successfully. If we couldn't, it should have shown us an error. And if we go back to returning this data, we should also still have false. Why? Because it's going to always be a default of false. All right, and all that. So I'm just going to save this, and in the next episode, okay, we're going to do the update, the show of a single field, update a single field, and to destroy. All right. Thank you all, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.